Thanks for the introduction, David. Next slide. The usual disclaimers. Yep, thanks. On to corporate overview. We're quite a young company. We have only 243 million shares on issue, a current market cap of $16 million. Cash in hand at the end of the June quarter was $1.8 million, although we are in the process of an SPP currently, which will be finalised on the 1st of August. And that is to raise at least another $1.5 million. And we have very good support from that so far, so we're confident of raising that amount of money. Some options also on issue, 44 million. Major shareholder is Horizon Minerals. Horizon Minerals is a company that we acquired our two projects from 3 years ago. You can see board of directors there. It's a mix of technical and financial and business expertise, all very experienced people. I'm a geologist by training. Next slide, please. You can see the location of our two projects. So we've got the Menzies and the Gingari projects, both along strike from Kalgoorlie in the eastern goldfields. We have the Bardock tectonic zone running through both projects, or up to Menzies at least. And historically, that's been a great producer of gold mines. We have a lot of known deposits along strike to the south of us, as well, down towards Kalgoorlie. Menzies is one of the major historic goldfields, gold camps in the eastern goldfields. Gold was discovered there in 1896, and through to the Second World War, there was 650,000 ounces at 22 grams per tonne produced from underground mining. There hasn't been any underground mining since then. In the 90s, open pit mining started up and only ran for probably about 10 years there, when we produced another 150,000 ounces. So in total, 800,000 ounces at 19 grams per tonne has been produced. Nothing in the last 20 years. So you can see that's a very high grade production rate, and that's what really attracted us to the Menzies project. The Gingari project is very much a grassroots project. 80% of it's under salt lakes and hasn't been effectively explored until we got in there about a year ago and started drilling under the salt lakes. There's also gold outside of the salt lakes on dry land, but it's very grassroots and has very exciting potential for a major discovery. I should point out that at Menzies, all of our resources are in granted mining leases on the highway, on the railway line, and within trucking distance to numerous mills. So we don't need to prove up a plus million ounce deposit to justify building our own mill, when we can utilise other mills with toll treatment or some sort of joint venture arrangement. Next slide. So our strategic objectives for 2022, follow up our Sirloin gold discovery at Gingari. It has a Canowna Bell analogue based on its lithostructural setting. That's what attracted us to this conceptual target under the middle of the lake last year. We made a discovery less than 12 months ago. And with the air core drilling, 3 phases of air core drilling totaling 12,000 metres, we've proved up gold over a 2-kilometre strike length by 1 kilometre across strike, and it's open in all directions. That hadn't been drilled before, so divergent discovery. Now that we've discovered the gold in the air core drilling under the lake sediments, we've initiated diamond core drilling to really prove up what the deeper primary gold structural controls are. And our first program underway on the 4th hole, we've already hit 5 metres at 4.8 grams per tonne, including 2.3 metres at 9.4 grams per tonne. So that's very exciting early on in the program, and we're almost halfway through that program at present. At Yundari, also within the same tenement, but 2 tenements, we've got a lot of potential for nickel sulfide mineralisation in komatiite, like Kambalda style. We've just done the first pass air core drilling and got some encouraging results, so we need to continue on and follow up that as well. Third part of our strategy is commercialising the mining opportunity at Menzies via some sort of mining agreement or joint venture arrangement or asset sales. We've just signed the first mining agreement to restart mining at Selkirk, which is just one of the resources at Menzies. And ultimately, we want to continue to grow the Menzies gold resources, particularly at depth. We know there's a lot of high-grade potential there. You can see from the historic production, Lady Shetland, for example, produced 191,000 ounces at 32 grams per tonne. So currently, all the resources are limited by the depth of the drilling. So there's a lot more potential to grow those resources in time. Next slide. So Goongarrie, this has been our focus for the last 12 months. It's taken up most of our time and effort. You can see there that what we call the Goblet, Sir Lawrence Gold Discovery, and like I mentioned, about 2 kilometres long. That oval shape is just to give you a basic idea of the size. That we do have mineralisation outside of that. All of those dots are colour-coded to the maximum gold value in the air core drill holes, projected to surface. So that was really just to narrow down where we need to target the deeper drilling. But the attraction for us was knowing the conglomerate unit, the host rock, and those D4 faults. There's also D3 faults going north, east, southwest, intersecting in there. It's an unusual concentration of so many faults. And so that means that the potential for a very large plumbing system for the gold fluids to come up as the potential for very large gold deposits within this area. And we found mineralisation on every line that we drilled. Next slide. Now this is zooming in on the same area, but from all of that air core drilling, that's really just telling us that there's gold there. Then we had to figure out within that larger area where we wanted to target the diamond drilling. So we've identified 9 priority targets and listed there. You can see, and the 4 drill holes that we've completed and received assays for are the black line traces there in target 1, mostly in target 3. Hole number 4 is the one where we intersected the 2.3 metres at 9.4 within the wider intersection there. You can see a photo of the core there and the quartz vein. So that's highly encouraging. Now we need to test all of these targets ultimately, but we will need to come back to this one and drill underneath this hole and along strike. We believe it's striking southwest northeast. So we'll get back there soon. But currently we're drilling target 2 and we've just finished a hole on target 8. So we've got a lot more, at least another 3,000 metres in the current program. But if we keep on intersecting gold, we'll just keep on expanding the program. Next slide. I mentioned the nickel potential. On here you can see in purple the highway ultramafic unit running for about 11 kilometres within our tenement package there. You've got the Sir Lawrence gold discovery there for scale. So it's just the east there and a different sequence of rocks. It has produced gold in the past at the Scotia mine, which Western Mining mine in the 1969 through the 1977. High grade nickel sulfide. So it's a very attractive target area, quite a large target area. You've also got ore minerals right with the Saints deposit discovery right on our southern border. So the same sequence of rocks running through there. So initially we just drilled 8,000 metres of air core to really narrow down the focus because we were just based on aeromagnetics before that to get us in the proximate area. And we were very encouraged by the results we got there. Multiple intersections in good location. We found that the Martite unit is often folded as well. Refolded and thrust, so it's actually wider in places than we anticipated. So now we need to follow up with electromagnetic survey to look for the conductors and potentially some RC drilling in that part of the lake. It's easy to access and drier and shallower too, so we can get a larger drill rig, unlike the diamond rig, onto those. Next slide. So this is just the northern area. We ended up identifying two areas. In the southern area is 1.7 kilometre strike length of interest, and this northern area it's over 2.5 kilometres, as you can see there, and some of the intersections are highlighted once again within the purple unit, which is the highway ultramafic. So that's highly encouraging. These are not nickel laterite. These are definitely in bedrock in a semi-fresh material at the base of the air core holes. So those grades are not economic, but they indicate that we're proximal to, potentially proximal to economic grade nickel sulfide mineralisation. So those are the areas we need to target with electromagnetic surveys in the near future. Next slide. Now, also, we recognise that this has good gold potential based on the rocks and the number of faults and the structural setting, particularly in that northern area there. So we assayed for gold in the same drill holes, and you can see once again in bedrock, 4 metres at 1.3, 16 within 16 metres at 0.7. That's just an example. There's multiple significant intersections with air core. Anything over about 0.1 grams per tonne is significant because you're only really just penetrating the bedrock. If it was lateritic, that'd be a different story. But all the laterite has been stripped away from this area. So we're going from the lake sediments into semi-fresh material and then ending in the fresh rock. So that's highly encouraging. We need to follow these intersections up as well, either with more air core initially or with RC drilling, which is probably the next move there. Next slide. Now on to Menzies. When we bought the project 3 years ago, we had a JORC resource of approximately 170,000 ounces. Now we've done a lot of drilling since then and proved up the JORC resources now to over 500,000 ounces at 1.33 grams per tonne. You can see they all lie within a corridor there and over 16 kilometres long. Some of that in between Lady Irene and Selkirk hasn't been tested at all. It's under quite a lot of cover, some ALN sand cover. But most of the mineralisation is within the Lady Shenton system. About 60% of our total resources in the centre there, right next to Menzies. Selkirk is quite a small deposit, but that's the one I mentioned. We've just signed a mining agreement with BML Ventures from Kalgoorlie to do a cutback of that small pit, basically, and that's planned to be back in production by the end of the year. And we're working on the best ways to commercialise the remaining resources. As mentioned, all the resources are limited by the depth of the drilling. You can see there on the left. So there's a lot of potential to, double or even triple these resources in time with deeper drilling. Next slide. There's a summary table of our resources. These are all open pittable resources. So almost all of it's just using a 0.5 grams per tonne cutoff, except Yonder does include a small portion of 2 grams per tonne, which would be at the base of any open pit. So it's just open pittable resources. I mentioned Lady Shenton system, which includes Pericles and Sterling. Sterling was a discovery by us when we were doing some drilling at Lady Shenton. Pericles hasn't been mined at all from surface, so Pericles and Sterling basically would be new pits, and Lady Shenton pit, you can see that the red shape is basically the resource projected to surface. So we'd end up with one very large pit or 2 pits, with Sterling being a separate one. So there's a lot of potential to, as I mentioned, to grow these resources, but we'd really like to get this back into production in the near term. Next slide. Now, we also recognise that at Yonder, this is probably better off being an underground mine rather than a cutback of the pit. This is the deepest pit, about 120 vertical metres in the north end, which is the brown shape. We did some underground resources, basically looking at plus 2 grams per tonne, plus 3 grams per tonne cutoff. That's the pink shapes there, you can see. Once again, limited by drilling. We stopped drilling because just getting a bit, well, not too expensive, but we weren't getting the return recognition in the marketplace for adding to these resources. So there's a lot of potential to keep on growing those resources at depth. We're probably better off putting a decline off the end of the pit there and going straight into the ore body and getting the restart underground mining and then drill it out from underground. Now the yellow shape is the historic mine. So the Princess May Shoot went down to 600 vertical metres. So we know these resources have deep roots, and it's still going. We have drilled underneath that and proven that there's still gold going down at 700 metres. A lot of that's been stoped out, but that just gives you an indication of the potential for these shoots to to continue at depth and really need to be just drilled more. So using a 3 gram cutoff, we have 59,000 ounces at 4.56 grams per tonne. So this is quite high grade, and we'll be able to truck that quite a long distance to mills. So there's a lot of potential ways we could skin this cat, basically. And that's the last slide, David.
Thanks, Ed. Great presentation, and clearly a very interesting project that investors and others should be watching. For the benefit of those watching online, can you explain the importance of being on a granted ML versus being on an exploration licence or other form of licence?
Yeah, well, that'll save us at least a year of getting into production. So if it's already granted, we don't have to go through that process again, particularly with the mines department being snowed under right now. We still need the engineering, the plan, the mine plan to be approved, and environmental permits. But basically, it just really speeds up the whole process, and it means we can get into production in less than 12 months rather than 2 to 3 years.
Now, whenever anyone talks about Kalgoorlie and areas north of Kalgoorlie and prolific gold producing areas such as Kalgoorlie and the goldfields, and I'll probably ask Alan the same question, they assume that everything's been explored, everything's been found, and there's nothing left. First of all, how do you get your hands on something as exciting as this? But how do you apply modern technologies and modern techniques, and what advantage is that giving you beyond what was even occurring 10 or 15 years ago?
Yeah, well, all the easy stuff's been found, that's for sure, and we have to go further afield and under salt lakes and more remote areas, but also at depth. Previous drilling was quite limited, like, for example, in our deep drilling. This Menzies project, we only had 20 holes which were drilled to 200 metres depth over the entire project area. Nowadays, with the drill rigs are much better. They have much larger capacity. So the RC rigs, for example, can easily drill down to 400 metres, and the diamond rigs can go, thousands of metres. So that sort of things have improved a lot and continue to improve. And the drilling companies we have in WA are world leading, so that really helps them. They build their own rigs. Also, the geophysical techniques have improved. Now help us much more with defining the structural targets, and not just with the magnetics, but with gravity and other methods like that. So we can test more conceptual targets under covered areas. So if it's covered by sand or covered by a salt lake, and that we can test those with more confidence than they could 20 years ago.
And like you say, even though 20 years ago wasn't the old timers, but the easy stuff was found. But what we're seeing more and more now is even things that historically would have been walked over and walked past are now yielding significant ore bodies. Yeah,
part of it's also the exploration or the prospecting goes in phases. When gold prices are up, we can probably fund and do appropriate exploration. When prices are down, we have to be very selective, and we can't do half as much as we would like. And that's been part of the reason for some really good discoveries, very good discoveries in Western Australia, not just in gold in recent years, but it's because the geologists have finally had enough money to do more effective exploration and not stop after getting a few discouraging results. So these things can take years to unfold, and that's normal. Finding stuff in the first 6 months with an exploration program is very, very unusual.
And talking about activity and being busy, you guys are clearly active and busy and have to find ore bodies. So are your neighbours, and everyone's busy around you. And how much do you learn from each other? But also, how much do they watch what you're doing with an eye on, potentially aggregating or bringing things together?
Yeah, everyone's watching everyone else. Don't worry about that. And even conferences like Diggers and Dealers, it's great. You can go and talk with all the other parties, all the neighbours, not just the neighbours, but to see what they're doing and how they're progressing. And if someone makes some sort of breakthrough from an exploration technique, or figures out something new, that becomes reasonably public fairly soon, and we learn from each other, and that's good. And we'd like to see other companies in that neighbourhood be successful, because that does mean that mergers and acquisitions are more likely, and ultimately that benefits the shareholders, which is our main game. Our main aim is to reward the shareholders. So that gives us other options, rather than every company trying to build their own mill and go into production, which doesn't make economic sense. It's good for the whole neighbourhood to be having some success, basically.
And a final question here from maybe a shareholder, but certainly someone very interested in the Kingwest story. Can you explain the similarities between Sir Lawrence and the Kanowna Belle geologically?
Yeah, the similarities, as we currently, and so far the model stands, is based on the lithostructural settings, which basically means the lithologies or the rock types are similar or almost the same. Particularly the conglomerate unit, and the structural settings is it's not just a typical shear zone, north-south shear zone. We have those D4, D3 structures. So northeast, southwest, intersecting the northwest, southeast structures. And where you get those intersections, that's where you get most of the gold falling out. So you need that structural trap basically for large gold deposits. And at Kanowna Belle, they have the same structural setting.
Brilliant. Ed, thanks for a great presentation. Kingwest Resources Limited, stock code KWR, clearly a company to watch. A hidden gem's been uncovered. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, David.